I want to chat a little bit about transport in Reading. This is a topic that I didn't find a lot of information about when I went to BSSM. Just a disclaimer, this is what worked for me. It might not work for you, but I hope that there's just a few tips and tricks you can take away just to make the move and the transition a little bit easier. So the first question I want to kind of answer is, how do I actually get to Reading? So Reading is about 3.5 hours from San Francisco and about 2.5 hours from Sacramento. These are the closest big cities close to Reading. And you'll find that most international flights will be landing in these two airports. Reading does have an airport, but it's a very domestic, very small airport. There's only a few flights serviced throughout the day. So you'll likely find your flight is heading into Sacramento or San Francisco. And once you're in these places, it can be a little tricky making your way up to Reading, as a taxi or an Uber can cost you well over $300. So what I would recommend and what you will find super helpful will be the rideshare Facebook page, specifically Bethel rideshare, BSSM Student rideshare. So I'll pop a few links in the description below where you can find different Facebook groups. These are really helpful, where you essentially just post where you're heading, what date and time, and if you're willing to pay for gas or of course split the cost. If you want to split a ride with different students, this will be probably your best bet in terms of getting to and from major cities around the area. It's really popular among students. Everyone is looking for rides in those key times of the year. So of course when school starts, around Christmas, around Thanksgiving, and then of course around graduation, many people are offering rides for students on the Facebook page, and a lot of people will just get together in little groups so that they can rent a car together just for a lot cheaper. Every time I landed for the school year in August, and then usually about 3 or 4 different people will say, okay, they're landing on the same day or similar time frame, same airport, and book a car altogether. And that makes the journey really affordable. There's always people going to and from Reading, sometimes even from Reading down to LA or Reading to Seattle. Lots of drives, and of course people want to split their costs as well. So often you'll find that it's just a really affordable and efficient way to get around from small town to other cities. The next topic I want to kind of cover is, how do you actually get around in Reading once the school year starts? Now, sadly, unlike major American cities like New York or Los Angeles, there's not a lot or any public transport available. There is one city bus, but it's quite unsafe to take, so I probably wouldn't recommend to actually consider that as a viable or reliable option. There's 2 ways that essentially you're going to be your main ways of getting around. One would be if you have a car and you are of course driving around, and then the second would be to carpool or to rideshare. With that option, there is of course Uber and Lyft. Now those can rack up a cost quite easily over the school year. I would say that option is not super cost efficient, but it is an option nonetheless. More often than not, what I found is Americans will actually make the journey across the states with their car and actually have that available throughout the school year. So kudos to you if you're trekking all the way across America to have your car available in Reading. Of course, if you're not flying, that's also a great option. Then your second option would be if you are, for example, an international student or an American student that doesn't have a car. You have a few different options, so don't stress. A lot of people come to Reading who don't have access to a car. Don't worry, you're not the first one, you won't be the last one. There's lots of people who figure this out as they go, but essentially ride shares will be your best friend. There is a really good carpooling system that people have kind of worked out over the years that works really well for BSSM students. And for this, Facebook pages will be your best friend. That is one option if you want to be carpooling and you have no intention of actually purchasing or renting a car while you are in school. Ride sharing is a great way to actually make sure you get from A to B, from school, to get your groceries, to go out to the movies or go for a swim in the lake. Just make sure you're broadcasting your plans being polite and considerate, you will find a ride where you need to go. And then the second thing is, if you are the one giving rides, you are a saint. Good job. You're helping people be in school, stay in school. That's awesome. But don't be afraid to actually just ask people for $1 here and there to actually add up to your gas costs. That will definitely help you in the long run. The second thing with that is, if you don't have a car but you intend to purchase a car or rent a car, both of those things are definitely options. Personally, I had a car all 3 years that I bought during first year. And there's just a few things to think about. Primarily the fact that you're probably going to want a second-hand car just due to finances. But essentially, places that you can find second-hand cars are going to be Facebook Marketplace, Bethel buy, swap, sell pages, BSSM Reading pages, and then different car dealerships, both in Reading and in the surrounding towns or cities. In those bigger cities, you're definitely more likely to find better deals and better options at car dealerships or even on Marketplace. But if you are looking primarily in Reading, your best bet is just to post on the Facebook page, specifically the buy, swap, sell page or Marketplace, that you are looking for a car. And of course, think about it, every year, hundreds of students come to Reading and buy a car, and hundreds leave again because of visas or moving to the next spot. It might not be the best car, might not be the most reliable car, but for a short period of time, for 9 months of school or 3 years of school, that might be a great option to just simply buy a car and then sell it again at the end. Or what you could do is to rent a car. There are a few different rental options. I'll pop it in the description below, but companies like Worry Free Auto, or just people who are renting out their cars through the school year, will have options for you. I think it's around starting at about $250, $300 a month, and then you have to include your insurance. But that might be an option if you know you're staying for a short amount of time and you don't have that upfront lump sum to buy a brand new car. Now, you might be wondering, should I have a car? Will I be okay if I don't have a car? Personally, I can speak from my experience of having had a car. I will say, for the freedom and the convenience side, it is definitely worth it. I was able to go where I wanted, when I wanted. I was able to leave events, you know, when my social battery was a bit tapped out, or if I spontaneously wanted to go to Chick-fil-A or Trader Joe's, I could very easily do that. But it's not essential. It really won't take away from your BSSM school experience if you don't have access to a car. It's definitely doable. Reading isn't a very big city, so the furthest thing away will be maximum 10 minutes. And again, it won't take away from your overall school experience if you don't have a car. Now, I can almost already hear my European friends asking, but Maz, what about biking around? I'm so used to riding my bike everywhere in my city. Of course, that is an option. Sadly, not really an option in Reading. Of course, if you're really, really driven, then by all means, go for it. But the problem is, Reading doesn't really have the infrastructure to support riding a bike. On one hand, it's super, super extreme weather. So if you're looking at riding your bike on a 45-degree day, or for my Americans, 115 degrees Fahrenheit, or on some days when it's snowing and raining and it's about 3 degrees Celsius, or I don't know, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, then of course riding your bike will be a little bit more challenging. And the other side is, Reading doesn't really have bike lanes or infrastructure to facilitate safe roadside biking. So you might be on a highway with trucks coming past with no real bike roads. You'll be sharing the road with cars and buses and trucks. And unfortunately, because drivers are not super used to bikes on the road, they're not very aware, they're not very considerate of it, and it makes it a little bit of a safety hazard. Between short distances, or maybe zipping from your house to a grocery store, that might be an option. But I wouldn't say, personally, I consider that to be a viable option for the whole school year due to the weather conditions, and then secondly, due to just the infrastructure, things like that to consider. Perfect. Thank you guys. That's all I have for you for this part of the series on transport. If you found this helpful, please leave a comment below, like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube culprits. If there was any part that you want to ask another question about or need some clarity, I'd be super happy to answer any questions in the comments below. It's been a pleasure sharing with you today, and I really hope that this was helpful to you. I'll see you in the next video.